Sorry, getting a bit of a howl round. And co-founder of Bedlam Productions, Gareth Unwin. We were good friends, and we had a sort of ambition at the time when we were at college to start a company together. Gareth's on the left. But when we left school, we didn't really trust ourselves to set up a company. So we both went our separate ways for a little while. He went into drama, and I went into documentary. So he came up through seconding, firsting director on a number of TV shows and feature films, where I went into current affairs and documentary. And then in 1992, we formed Bedlam Productions. But at that particular point, we were battling one another. We both wanted to be directors, and so whenever a project came into the company, we'd fight over it. In a good way, we're good friends. And then in 1994, Gareth decided that he really wanted to be a producer. He'd had a couple of successes in the films that he was making. Really enjoyed that process. And at that stage, he turned around to me and said, "Simon, let's find a script for you to direct." But at that particular stage, making a transition from documentary director to drama director, it's tough. It's not easy. They're very different industries. They're both creative, but they both have their set of people that you know, people who you don't know, and it's hard to break through. So I started reading every script that I could get my hands on. And after 2 years, I got nowhere. I'd read some interesting pieces that had some interesting elements to them, but nothing that really resonated with me as a director. I'm not a flashy commercials director. I'm much more based in human emotion, and I just couldn't find something that was working. I was getting very frustrated. I'd been looking for 2 years. And then a friend of mine, who's a casting director, said, "Why don't you put on a play?" So I started to read the greats, and 2 or 3 pages in, just found it was impenetrable. It wasn't anything that I was again bonding with. So I turned to a friend of mine, Joan Lane, who's a theatre producer, and said to Joan, "Do you have any unmade plays?" And she was like, "Darling, I have thousands." And she started to send me through. And in April 2006, she sent me. She'd been sending me script after script, and she sent me 2 scripts. One was called Wasted, and the other was called The King's Speech. And the email said it's a rather nice little play which should sit well in the year of the Queen's 80th birthday. It should go down well with Middle England viewers. That was the headline. And I remember I printed it out, got into bed, started reading it, and about 5 pages in, I knew that I was reading something incredibly special. I recognised the person. This, believe it or not, this is really difficult for me. When I was at school, I struggled to speak out loud. If someone asked me to read something now, I'd clam up completely. And so as I was reading this story of a king that was struggling, I was remembering my time at school struggling to read. And so it resonated with me really well. 1 o'clock in the morning, 30 pages in, I know this is the film that I personally want to direct. At 3 o'clock in the morning I finish. I want to wake my wife up. I don't. I let her sleep. I'm very excited. I wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning, wake her up, tell her this is the film, this is the one that I'm going to direct. But it's not easy. So I made a few calls, got in to see the heads of film in the BBC and Channel 4, and pitched to them. Very quickly they said no. But I'm not sure they said no to the script. I think more said no to me. And I sat on it for about 2-3 months. And then I'd made a film about Scientology, of all things. And someone called me up straight afterwards and said, "We really like that film. We'd like you to come in and talk. And have you got any ideas?" So went in, had a long conversation with the production company. And then they said, "Have you got any royal ideas?" So I said, "Oh, I've got this script about a stuttering king." Gave it to them, and we were going to make a documentary drama. And then very quickly, we'd gone from making a documentary drama to a TV drama to being in front of the film department at this big British indie. And I remember going into that meeting, and I swear to God, went in, sat down, and my chair was slightly lower than theirs. They were sitting with a big bank of all of their awards behind them, lawyers, and I had a broken chair. But they really liked the piece. We got very excited, Gareth and I. And I say Gareth's experience really came to the fore at this particular point, and we'd left that meeting thinking, that's it, we're making a movie. 6 months later, we're nowhere. We still have nothing's going on, and everything fell through. It just we were doing contract after contract after contract, and then it folded. So I then had to meet with I'm just sorry, next one. I then needed to meet David Seidler. This is his. That's the play that got sent through. Now, David, when I met him, lovely man. The big thing that I needed to know was how accurate was the story that he was telling me. Where did it come from? I'd never heard this before. I knew about the abdication. I knew obviously about the Second World War, but I knew nothing about this stutter. And so I was asking David, where did it come from? David's story is that he was a stutterer as a young man, and he used to listen to these speeches that the king was making, and it inspired him to get over his stutter. And it was always a story as a screenwriter that he wanted to write, but he never felt that he had the capability to do that until during the early 80s he made a film with Francis Ford Coppola called Tucker, Man of His Dreams, and at that point he felt that he was qualified enough to do the story that he'd been born to write. He got in touch with Lionel Logue's family to ask to see the archive, and they said, look, we're happy to show you this material, but on one condition: you need to ask permission of the palace. So David wrote to the Queen Mum, the then Queen Mum, said, I'd like to do this story, and he got a handwritten letter back from her saying, I understand why you'd like to write this story, but please, please, please don't do it in my lifetime. And so, which he said, fine, that's no problem, not realizing that she would go on to live to be 104. But then when he did write it, the one thing that he knew that it would take a long time, as a screenplay is an unusual art form, with all with the camera moves and everything that's actually is a very visual piece of work. So he had to get it out of himself. So he decided, his then wife told him, write the play, get that out, and let's see if people like it. And they did. But so jumping on, when we then fell over with our production partner, we then thought, well, how are we going to do this? Gareth and I, we've got lots of experience in the industry, but we don't have experience of making a feature film of the scale that we're looking at. And at this particular time, I was still thinking that I was going to direct. I was getting very excited. But we just didn't know, because it had been turned down. I think I can probably get £1 million for myself to go out and direct this. And then we started to look for production partners, and is there an arrow on there? Oh, there we go. Shoot him. That's Emil, and that's him on board to start doing some of the rewrites, and that's when it really started to come to life, and really started to change. And it's a huge difference from the play that I originally got my hands on to what went through Tom's and the other producers' hands, and also the creators were coming through from the UK Film Council and the Weinstein Company. And one of the problems that we actually had with the original play was that it spent a lot of time just teaching people how people got over their stutter or these techniques. And there was a lot of information on that. But also what we were doing is we had a 10-year timeline. They first met in 1925, and we're going all the way up to the eve of war in the film. And when you read it as a play, it just zipped past. It felt like it was over the course of a year. And then we also had three very big speeches, which we knew were the hurdles that Colin, the Bertie, had to get over. And it's how do you have these big points, but without making them feel like you've ended, and there's another ending, and then there's another ending. And one of the keynotes that came back from the Weinsteins was, at what point does Bertie, as Colin, fall in love with Lionel, because it's a bromance. And there's, I don't know if people remember, but there's a scene where they fall out at Westminster Abbey the night before the coronation, and he feels that he's been betrayed, he's been let down, and they have a massive fight. And then he goes up to the gods, and there's a big smile on Colin's face, and it's that moment where he feels that he can trust him. And that came from the Weinsteins. There were a lot of other sort of little notes that were coming from, I think, the UK Film Council. They're very interested in how do we humanise the royals? How do we make them? How do we see that transition? There's a moment where he comes back dressed in his black tie, and he tells a lovely story to the two girls about a penguin that goes all the way to Buckingham Palace and wrapping his arms around them. But then the next time you get to see him, it's him as a king, and the girls, rather than come up and hug their father, they bow. And it's the sense of duty and that then gets put onto him, which again adds to the pressure of what he's about to go and do in terms of this speech. Tom was also, I mean, obviously this is the words of the play, but obviously another one of the big story points of the play is actually the location itself, and this is obviously a very famous scene, famous setting, which I don't know if people know the full story of this, because this is an S&M club on certain nights of the week in London. But this particular back wall, we actually had a look at the original Doctor's studio, Lionel's studio. But it's a very boring square room, like most doctors' surgeries. And so we found this place. And what Tom really liked about it is the messy background. He actually felt that it added to the chaos. It was showing you the chaos that was actually inside the king's brain when he was trying to overcome this speech impediment. Where do we go next? So everyone's putting into this. Everyone's adding their bit, making it richer, making it resonate more and more. And then really for us, the final person to add to this was Lionel Logue himself. A few months before we were due to go into production, we got in contact with, we tracked down Mark Logue, who was looking after the family archive, and he brought in letters, diaries, and it was at a nervous point. David Seidler was very nervous at this moment to see whether he'd actually written the character correctly, if he'd managed to convey the real true essence of this man. And the one thing that we found, and it was actually the top of the box when they opened it, this was our prop. This isn't the real letter, and I don't know if people remember from the end, but this is what we wrote that was actually going to physically be there for the end of war scene. When we opened the box, what was actually inside was the actual piece of paper, but it was annotated like a musical sheet, and it was actually telling him when to stop, when to pause, when to breathe, just to slow him down. It just added that element of detail and realness to the actual story itself. Now, once the film's made, once it's all done and it's all out, we've gone all through those notes and everything, you then go through that stage where you've got to give it over to somebody else, and it's does the audience buy the story? At the particular time, we released in Telluride, which is a film festival in the US, It's a small festival, but it's very well respected. You get a lot of good critics that go, and the Weinsteins are the masters of releasing films, and they know that we don't have the money to go out and compete against the likes of Transformers, and their thoughts were, let this be a film that belongs to the individual. It'll be word of mouth. It actually opened on 2 screens in the US. That's how it started, very, very slow open. At the time I was in Cambodia. I was shooting a documentary. I was working with the Department of Homeland Security and Immigration Customs Enforcement. A bit of a mouthful. I was undercover tracking American paedophiles, which wasn't a pleasant job. And Gareth phoned me up and just said, we've had a 10-minute standing ovation. It's going crazy. And then went to Toronto, and then the snowball effect. And that's when it went out. It was out of our control. And then, as you know, it did pretty well at the major awards, and which was an incredible experience for me. It was a boyhood dream to be sitting in the Academy. You're there, you can't quite believe it. Anyone that ever goes, just as a note, it's a 3 or 4 hour event. Eat before you go. Take cash with you, because it's a cash-only bar. There's no free booze. So between it's a 3-hour live event, so people get up and they run out, try to get a drink in, and then if you don't get back in time for the commercial breaks, people just there's fillers, so the audience doesn't look empty. Because we were lucky enough to be the most nominated film that night. We had 12 nominations, but by midway through, we were starting to get nervous. We'd won 1, which was amazing, but for best original screenplay. But a lot had started to go against us, and we were starting to get nervous. I wasn't sitting right up at the front with the actual producers. I was sitting maybe about 10 rows back. And then Gareth's wife came up to me, fiance came up to me and said, "Simon, we've got to swap. She's getting nervous." And I went and sat down. I felt like I'd had a drink during the day, and then I had to go back to work, and I felt really like this, quite punchy. And I sat down, lovely. I was 3 rows back, and I think there was Gwyneth Paltrow was singing, and I was getting, this is great. And there's a lovely lady next to me, and I'm telling a little about my story very, very briefly. And I just said, but it's not our night, and we're that one that's going to go away, and we're the front runner, it doesn't work. And she just looked at me and she went, "Oh, don't worry. She said, you've won all of the ones that you want." And I was like, "Oh, bless." It's a bit mental. And I said, "How did you know that?" And she went, "My husband was the former head of the Academy." And he just like, "Hello." And at that point I was back. I got really, really excited. And then it comes down to that moment. It comes down to when this letter comes out. And it's a hero of mine, Steven Spielberg, opened this letter. But I don't know if you remember at the time, there were quite a few films that began with "the." And it's amazing how long that "the" lasts. And I remember as he pulled it out and he went "the," well, I'm thinking, it's not Toy Story. And we heard the King's Speech. And I can honestly say, if people have watched films, if you're familiar with films and all of the techniques that they do for those moments, it all happens at once. It is like, I presume, like dying and you see your life flash before you. But the smell intensified. It got louder, it got quieter, it sped up, it slowed down. I felt like I'd exploded. And we just looked at utter disbelief. And it was just one of those truly, truly memorable moments that it finished, and I just didn't want to go to bed. I mean, it was, you have the parties, you're getting thrown around, and it was just like, and I remember literally being in a hot tub at 6 o'clock in the morning with a friend of ours called Aaron, Gareth, myself, and the Oscar, smoking cigars, thinking, this is so LA. And the sun came up and it hit the Oscar. And I swear to God, and I get a bit, obviously a bit creative. It hit the Oscar and we went, that's it, let's go to bed. You just can't get any better than this. And you do wake up and you do feel, oh, is that it? Did I dream that? Was it real? And then there's a life after this. And I don't know if you were familiar. For me, another proudish moment is we had a party afterwards. We invited a lot of people down. Sky News came down, and our friends were there, and we were all taking pictures. And Mark Logue, the grandson of Lionel, wanted to take photographs of the Oscar, and I'm not sure Why? This is my daughter. Yeah, that wasn't. Oh, you laughed. We didn't. That was quite terrifying. Gareth at this particular point was sleeping. He came up and everyone was very quiet, just moving around. I think I was the other side of the pool, just waving like Peter Sellers at that point. And they do actually have an Oscar hospital. I swear to God, you go to the academy and you go up to the top floor and they come out, and I promise you, they have little, little gauze over here, and they come out with the white gloves and they take it away. So the statuette is not what Stephen gave us. The bottom is, because it got smashed to pieces, the head caved in, the chest fell off. It wasn't good. But a friend of mine actually said, well, look, I think it's a great story. It's a human interest story, and it got so popular. I mean, I think the BAFTA award ceremony that year was the most watched it had been in 10 years because of the King's speech. And so he got me to do a little piece for the news, and then it went mental. It went global. I got more recognition for my daughter dropping the Oscar than actually for the company winning. And then so suddenly we're on the front pages of, well, not front pages, but these are sort of ladies' magazines in the UK. And then there's this story here, and I'm like thinking, what the hell's this? And it's actually at the time they thought it was a Banksy. And it turns out that it's not. It was a rival artist in the Bristol area that was putting two fingers up to Banksy because he didn't win the Oscar for Exit Through the Gift Shop. But he said, oh, but the little girl did win an Oscar and beat you. And obviously I was so, at this particular point I didn't know, so I decided to take my daughter down to see this. She doesn't like the video anymore. When she drops it, she cries. She knew it was her. We didn't say, Lara, that's you. She just ran straight over to it. I think, yeah, star in the making, maybe. But at this particular stage, I think what it showed to us is that people really liked this story. It was theirs. It wasn't ours anymore. I'd lived with this now for 3 or 4 years, but suddenly it meant things to other people. And other things that were coming through from us that we were having a very positive effect was that we were getting letters from speech therapists, speech schools, people with stutters, saying thank you for making this film and making my friends understand, or the people that aren't my friends, people in the periphery, understand that I'm normal. I just stutter. And then last year, and I think this is where it then sort of ties back into the educational part of today. Last year, there was a TV series that won a BAFTA called Educating Yorkshire. And they call it a rig show. Basically, it's a documentary where they instill multi-cameras, and they installed it around a school in Yorkshire. It's a wonderful, wonderful series. And Gareth phoned me up and said, "Have you seen it? Did you watch last night?" And this is what happened.
Allahu Akbar. It's the week of Musharraf's speaking exam, and Mr. Burton is giving him a final coaching session.
So, the fact that you're up, so how am I going to do the speaking exam? I can't even speak. Yeah. It tells us that we've got 1 or 2 roadblocks in the way, haven't we, really?
It's his last chance to get Musharraf speaking fluently.
If I give you something to read out...
Oh, yeah.
We're not that interested in what you're saying at the moment, are you? It's just kind of the mechanics of putting it together.
Yeah.
Shall we go for that poem there, The Moment?
Okay. Yes, sir.
Okay, I am your audience.
Okay.
Tap it out as much as you need. Sing it if you need to.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, I'll...
Do you want me to face you or turn away from you?
Oh, just...
Face you?
Okay. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Breath, nice and loud, nice and proud. right, one thing, and it's only because I watched the King's Speech quite recently, all right?
Okay.
One thing he does, right, because it's a very similar thing to you, in that he just can't get the words out. But one thing he does do is he makes him listen to some music, right? And then when he's listening to the music, gets him to do it again.
Okay.
So have you got your phone with you?
Right,
just plug it into mine. I'll put you some awful music on.
Okay.
Right. Right, you ready?
Yes, sir.
There?
Okay, that's right.
Go for it. 1, 2, 3.
The moment when, after many years of hard work and a long voyage,
Is it too loud? A bit loud.
That I own this. Is the same moment when the trees unloose their soft arm from around you, the birds take back their language, the cliffs
Fisher.
the cliffs fissure and collapse, the air moves back from you like a wave and you can't breathe.
What? Pause.
No,
carry on.
No, they whisper, you own nothing. You were a visitor time after time, climbing the hill, planting the flag, proclaiming we never belonged to you. You never found us, it was always the other way round.
That's insane.
Yes.
Did that feel good? Did it sound,
yeah.
Do you feel confident? That's
yes.
Can I go get Miss Lee? Stay there. Good lad. Can I borrow you, Miss Lee, for a second? Right, our poet extraordinaire, right? You ready?
Yeah. When the trees unloose their soft arms from around you, the birds take back their language, the cliffs fissure and collapse, the air moves back from you like a wave and you can't breathe. You never found us, it was always the other way round.
What an unbelievable thing that is.
That must be one of the best things in your life, actually. For the first time.
I genuinely didn't think it would work, but amazingly it did.
One of you sitting here that actually hated it in year 7 because, unfortunately, some people bullied him. And he wanted to leave. And in year 7, he had an attendance of about 34% because he didn't have a voice then. And he's got one now. So, Musharraf, where are you? This is taking a lot, but he wanted to show just what we've and you've done for him.
Oh, damn. Come on. I want to thank you today for letting me speak in front of all of you. I want to especially thank Mr. Burton for helping me overcome my stammer. This school has helped me improve so much that I do not have enough words to tell you all how. I really am going to miss the school, the teachers, the students, and just the whole high school environment. It's good. I don't have a dream to work at a call center, or else I would be fired the same day. I really want to thank you all for listening, and I hope the best for all of you, for all my fellow students and teachers.
You don't know how proud I am of you. Well done.
Thank you. Any questions? Anyone? Anyone? Yes.
Thank you so much. If I can help with my tears, I'm able to speak.
Sorry to leave you on a sad note.
That's extremely inspirational. Thank you so much for that. We have a few microphones available for you to ask any questions, put some debates forward. Let's take advantage that we have Simon here brilliantly with us this afternoon. If I can kick off with one first question,
Yes.
maybe not to do with this emotional moment, going more of a political debate in terms of the difficulties in putting forward an independent movie, independent productions. We have people here in Brazil working with that, and it'll be interesting also to have and hear their opinions about that. And we got from you that it was not easy. You started back in 1990 something, and the results of that came like after a few years.
Yes.
If you can share to us a few lessons in terms of what you think it worked in the UK from an independent producer perspective, that we could perhaps share with our colleagues here, that would be great. Thank you.
I mean, my production experience at that particular point was very limited, and I think a lot of the time having a naive understanding of what's ahead helps. I think also sometimes you can't do it all on your own. That was one of the biggest things that Gareth and I knew. When we went to some friends of ours that were exec producers and said, can you recommend a production company that we can go to? Because we went with a big production company, it got swallowed up, we weren't having anything to do with it, we weren't having any control over it, and suddenly it was one of their slate of films. So we were recommended to see the Seesaw Boys, who were a boutique company like ourselves, a bit bigger, they had a sales background. And I think one of the things that stopped me from going back even further, that stopped me from getting into films when I first left school, is because I thought I had to be a genius. You have to be a genius and you have to be able to do it all on your own. But it's a collaborative process. And I think it's about the team that you put forward. Myself walking into Film 4 and saying, would you like to make this film? And them going, Simon, who? No. It was like, well, let's get someone who they do trust. And let's build that momentum up. But there's definitely a point Gareth had told me from a very early stage, because I still have yet to direct my first feature, that you have to have belief in the piece that you've got. You have to want to spend at least 2 to 3 years of your life getting that across the line. And so it is a sort of dogged determination. And who you know, it's a blend of everything. You know, there aren't do this, and it'll get made. I mean, one of the accusations that was made after the film came out was that we sat in a house in North London and, like the witches in Macbeth, put all these lovely little bits together to make this kind of film. It wasn't like that. But I think if there's independent filmmakers that are out there right now in the audience, it's find your voice. I mean, it sounds a bit cheesy because of everything that's just gone on there, but it really was, for me, how I found this script was finding something that spoke to me, and I understood the characters that were in that film because I had a personal experience of it. So it's make it personal, especially if it's your first one. Make it personal.
Okay. Should I go? Oh. Hi.
Oh, are you speaking Portuguese? I haven't got my headphones on.
Oh no, I was speaking English.
Oh,
yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
I would like to know the creative process behind the King's Speech from the point of view of a director, and as you said, is a teamwork. And I would like to know the relationship between the director, the production designer, and editor, cinematographer, and everything.
Yeah.
And
it's quite a lot of work. You need to have a chat outside.
And you, as a director, your creative process from choosing the shots and breaking down the script.
I did with this. I didn't. I was co-producing.
Yeah, I know, but
this.
Yeah, you as a director, not this project, but you as a director, your creative process behind it, behind the script, or behind how you choose your shots, how you break down the script, or.
I think it's one of those. Part of you has to remember the first time you read it, and that feeling that it gave you the first time around, and what it inspired in you. And then what you're trying to do is recreate that in that final product, which is the feature film itself. And then, as a director or producer, you're trying to convince everybody else around you of your vision. And so a lot of the times you'll be picking collaborations that have that have come over the years. So you have basically you'll have friends that you've worked with, colleagues that you've worked with, that you'll have a shorthand to. You've already gone through the pain of getting it wrong and realizing that you can't communicate in the way that you're talking. I mean, I work with an editor, and I can honestly say that he second guesses where my brain is, because we've worked together that long. Where Tom comes from, I mean, David was telling me there was some times when they were working together, because it's a creative process, people are a bit fragile. Writers are very fragile because they've spent all that time on their own in a little darkened room, like a mushroom. And then when you say something nasty, that's their baby. It took David Seidler maybe 40 years to get that out. And so to sit there and go, I think that's not very good, doesn't work, it's like, come on. So you have to kid glove people. And Tom was very respectful of David in that process. And if there were scenes that he didn't like, he would just say, I don't know how to shoot that. And he got it. And it was just like, thanks for telling me this way. You don't like it, let's do something else. In terms of the actual, the set design, it's how long's a piece of string. I mean, it's also it's budget. So what have you got? Where can you go? I mean, if you remember the final sequence where they're walking down that long corridor, and then they go out onto the balcony after doing the speech. That's not in the palace, obviously. But also that part of the palace. If you do go, we were fortunate enough to be shown round and shown that balcony, and it's actually a Chinese dining room. That's what it looks like on the inside. They've got pieces from Brighton Palace inside there. So a lot of it, what you're trying to do with the creative is also to heighten what the emotion is on the characters that you're actually bringing in. In the same way as I said, the surgery, it's nothing like the original surgery, but it meant something. It was another layer. And some of those moments are chance, and some of those moments are by design. I mean, when we were filming at Nebworth House, it snowed. So as we're taking in the trucks, we could get the trucks up to the actual house itself. But Tom shot there, and suddenly you've got these wonderful moments that actually you're now seeing seasons in the film, when actually we only shot for 6 weeks. But you feel that time's passed. So nature helped us in that particular aspect.
Thank you.
No problem.
Okay. Great presentation, by the way. Over here.
Oh,
just two quick questions. First one was, could you tell us a bit about how you got your two leads? You spoke about Geoffrey Rush.
Yeah.
Was thinking about Colin Firth. His first Oscar was huge for him, as well as Helena Bonham Carter, how you brought them aboard. And then also, it would be good to get your sense about, from what you said, I'm not really sure what you studied, whether you trained for the craft you ended up in, but it would be good to get a sense from you about what you think about the training for the craft of filmmaking in the UK and how you see that, where you see that headed.
Okay.
Thanks.
Well, the first one, in terms of how we got the cast, when we first got the script, we thought, these are the people that we want. This is for me directing. So I'm thinking of TV actors. And then once we realised that we had a larger budget and a bigger expectation, and we were starting to sign with the Weinsteins, they basically say, Seesaw had a first look deal with Momentum, which are a British distribution company, Transmission in Australia, and we're then signing a deal with the UK Film Council and with the Weinsteins. If they're going to invest that amount of money, there's a sort of a bums on seats, and they have distributors or studios will have an algorithm. These kind of players are worth this amount of money, and so you have to go through. We went, there's sort of 10 people that you have to look at, and if you can't get them, then we're not going to give you as much money. So it's trying to find that blend, and it's not sometimes that they don't want to do it; it's they're not available to do it. So you want that person and they can't come. You want this person, they can't come, and there's a lot of to and fro to try to get that balance right. Because Geoffrey's on board, so we're working around Geoffrey. Colin was always on the list, was always on that list. And I do remember, I don't know if anybody else has seen The Single Man, Tom Ford's film. That came out the year before, it was sort of released, and it did incredibly well. And suddenly Colin was amazing to see him in that particular role. And one of the investors actually said, it's great that Colin's in the film. And everyone thought, wow, we're not sure yet. He said, there's literally pen hovering over the checkbook. No, you don't understand. It's great Colin's in the film. And so that was sort of decision was, we all agreed. But then with Helen, she was making Harry Potter at the time. And so all of the scheduling, when she came aboard, all the scheduling had to be around her because she'd be doing 5 days on the Harry Potter set, and at the weekend she'd be coming and doing the King's Speech. And if there was an overrun on the Harry Potter set, that took precedent over us because it was a much bigger production. And then I think the trickiest person to get right, because we only had him for maybe 6 days, was the brother, because you had to have someone that had to be the one born to be king, and I think Guy Pearce did it spectacularly well. In terms of my training, I originally was a banker. I did 5 years in the city when I left school because I didn't have the courage to do what I really wanted to do, something creative. I went travelling for a couple of years to try to find myself and worked for a production company in Berkeley and realised that a lot of people in the industry, in the creative industry, they're not necessarily passionate about it. They're doing it like it's a bank. They just fell into it because so-and-so had a job and they turned up a particular day and they're working. And I was so excited to be in this. I'm thinking, I was in banking. It drove me mad. And I then came back and I found out that my local college, Ravensbourne, was actually the best television film school, TV school in Europe. So there were 32 places, of which they had something like 850 applicants per year. And I was going in as a mature student, and I didn't want to go in to just get a media degree or HND. I wanted something that was going to give me a career. And I'm very much like, if I was to join the army, I wouldn't go in Sandhurst to be a captain. I'd have gone in to come up through the ranks because I need to know everything that's going on around me. The idea of being a director, it's quite a fickle job. You know, it might be one that you're good at, it might not be, and then you don't earn any money. But I knew that if I trained myself up at a trade as a cameraman or lighting or sound, that at least I had something to fall back on rather than going back into banking. So I did that. And Ravensbourne, to its credit, it's a little bit like an old school. You go in the industry in the UK, and everybody seems to have been there, and it did me very well.
Thanks for coming to Brazil
Pleasure.
and talking about the film. I've got a little question actually about the script. I'm interested to know how the script was demonstrating the stammer for Colin Firth, and whether the stammer was in the script or whether it was left out of the script in order to make it easier for all the technical people working with it.
There was a couple of key moments where it was in the script, and then it was taken out. I was actually talking to somebody earlier about the stammer. You know, it's not the normal stammer as we know. There's many different types of stammer in the way that it actually comes out. It closes people's throats up, so it's not that. It comes from here, and so we left that. We left that to Colin. We left him to go and explore what stammer he was going to develop himself. And I don't know if you remember the chap from I, Claudius. He was in there, and Colin did ask him, because that was such a famous role as a stammerer, and I did say to him, you know, how'd you do it? He said the problem is how to stop, because once you've learned to do it, because you've got to think it and know those points when you do stammer, it's hard to switch that off.
And just another little cheeky question: did you film the bit at the end first? His final speech? Did you film that first? Or
no, it wasn't first. No. It wasn't first. I think it was built. I can't actually remember where it was. It sat in the schedule. I'll find out for you though. Anybody else? Oh.
Hello.
Hi.
Did the movie open doors for you?
Did the movie
open doors for you?
Yeah. Yeah. it's one of those things that people want to know. I mean, people want to recreate that kind of success, and so again, it's finding that voice. It changed people's perception, undoubtedly. It opened doors. That said, it doesn't mean that what you then put in front of people gets made, because they're going to be judging it as they would judge anything else. But I do remember, I think it was the day after we dropped the Oscar, and I'd made an appointment to go and see Stephen Gagan's agent, and he did Traffic and Syriana, and I was just so excited to go out and see him. And it was just like, this guy's listening to me, and you sort of before, I've been in to see agents before, and they're quite intimidating people, especially in LA. They really know their stuff, they're not messing around, and they don't suffer fools. And suddenly I'm sitting on the couch, he's got Martin Scorsese on the phone, and we're having a chat, and you think, this is great. Nothing happened, of course, but again, it opens, people are listening. And people, and I think it's the one thing going into before you get into the industry, you forget that it's a business. You know, this is a lot of money that people are putting on the line, and as much as we consider ourselves artistic or artists, we work in a funded environment. You know, Michelangelo was funded. I'm not comparing myself to him, but it's funded. So you have to work within the confines of what somebody else wants to a degree, because the one thing they do want is return on their money. And so there's some smart people out there, and you just have to, you know, up your game. I did suffer. This has been personally. I don't know, but I'm not saying for the Seesaw Boys, but had this. I've got the gift. You know, I can pick up scripts like this. Forgetting that actually it took me, you know, maybe 15 years to get to that stage of picking up that script. So sometimes I will read a script now and think, I think this is a great idea, but it's not that script. You know, I can see this, but I can't. It's getting it to the next stage, which takes an incredible amount of time and effort, a collaborative sort of process.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Hi.
No more? One more.
Hi. Do you know how the palace and the queen felt about the movie?
Sorry?
How the palace and the queen felt about the king's speech?
Palace?
Yes, how they...
We did tell them beforehand that this was going on, and I can't tell you the truth, I can't remember whether we sent them a script before we went into production. I think they might have been a bit nervous about that. But they loved it. And I don't mean this in I tell you whatever we want, they loved it. They really, really did enjoy it. I think we honoured her father. In a way, we showed that it was a sense of duty. He didn't want to be king. I think one of the things when we were looking at the actual story itself is, you know, this is a story. It's a bromance. It's a relationship between two men. But actually, if we look at the time of war, we were starting to find these other parallels when we were making the story. And there's a moment in the film where he's sitting down with his daughter watching Pathé newsreel and Hitler speaking, and you suddenly realise that you've got this guy, our king, who's trying to do everything to not have power, and you've got someone on the other side that's trying to do everything to get power. And the palace invited the producers down to sit in front and give a big speech to their staff. So we got a private tour of the palace. We got to go up onto that balcony and have a look out. I didn't get to wave behind the curtains. And my wife didn't come to that one. I took my mum, she was ever so proud. And then Tom was invited to a small party at the palace. So they loved it. They loved it. I like to think that's why the next in line to the throne is pick that particular name for his child. Anyway.
Me.
Oh, hello.
You show us the historical accuracy of the movie and everything. Is there a line in the script you think now we could cross an historical line because the history is not working so well right now? We have to make a difference. Is that an issue?
We cheat time. You know, we were compressing 10 years into 90 minutes. We definitely, you have to, I think some characters are, maybe I don't know how, I don't have any sort of direct reports of some of the, obviously we're not there, it's not been documented, it's not been filmed for 10 years and then we've sifted it all through and that's what it is. So there's a lot of creative license that's gone into that. I personally don't remember us saying, well, that's a piece of history. It doesn't fit what we want to say. Let's get it out. But it's one of those things that what we want to do is look at the essence of what those 10 years were. What was the struggle for that particular man, and then put that into the film itself. We didn't take any. I don't think we took any liberties with the history.
Thank you.
Hello, and thank you for the presentation.
Yeah,
and I've got a question. And do you have any personal advice for new script writers that are starting over the career?
You're going to write a lot on spec, which is obviously writing without getting paid. You need. I hear a lot of people that say that they're writers and they don't write. They talk about being writers, they talk about their ideas, and they don't commit them to paper. To be a writer, you have to write. I know it sounds really obvious, but it's amazing how many people don't make that step. You have to be aware that you're going to put all of your effort into a script, and then someone might not even read it. But then you just have to generate another idea. Another idea, another idea, another idea. I wouldn't advise having the golden idea that's the one that's going to burst you through and suddenly everything's going to change and your life's going to be amazing. You're going to write Star Wars. But Star Wars wasn't his first film. You know, you can look, there's 3 or 4, and there's a lot of practice that takes to get to this particular point. I think you have to enjoy the process. There's a couple of films I can recommend you see, which is quite interesting from a writer's perspective. There's a wonderful American documentary that talks to writers of every background, and so you're talking to people that get paid millions of pounds for scripts, dollars for scripts, and you're getting people that get paid 100,000. There was one particular that really chimed with me, and there was one of the guys was making bargain basement sort of films. He made 10, but he hated them. You know, he was a writer. He was getting paid. Yeah. And then he went into therapy. This is in LA, and he went into therapy with a guy, and they said there was another writer in there that was getting paid millions. So, you know, he's getting paid enough because they can afford the same therapist. He's getting paid millions, but his problem was none of his scripts were getting made. I think the thing is, most of the time, unless you're lucky and you're a polymath and you can do whatever you turn your hand to, it's a way of life. And sometimes you're going to be ahead, sometimes you're not. And I think it's also about your association with other creative individuals. You'll get a lot of, whether you're going to go on to be a director or it's your relationship with another up-and-coming director. It's just keep knocking on that door. One of the things that when we left college, there were 30 people that came out of my school that were all incredibly qualified, but people do fall by the wayside. It's tough, and you don't step through and go, wow, it's amazing. Don't compare yourself, would be my biggest piece of advice. Don't compare yourself to the person that wrote that first script and sold for $1 million. You know, the lady that did Juno, or you know, suddenly you're writing first out the gate has got you an Oscar. Don't aim for that. Just aim to be a writer and just keep writing.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Simon, you represent Bedlam, UK here, yes. And we know you have opened Bedlam Brazil with Phil representing. I wonder, what are your expectations in terms of having this Brazilian representation here? What is in the pipeline? What do you expect in terms of partnerships?
We came down here, Phil and I came down here, my wife's Carioca. I came down here first about 11 years ago, and at the time I came down, wow, Brazil's amazing, Rio's amazing, but there's no work here. You know, so I'm a filmmaker and there's no work, there was no opportunities. But it's changed. The landscape here has changed considerably, and I've been going to Rio Content Market now for 4 years, and I've seen the market itself grow, I've seen the actual organization grow there, and obviously there are a lot of opportunities, financial incentives and opportunities here. So the market's hungry and it's growing, and it's for me it's picking the right project. We've dipped your toe in the water with a few, and finding that sometimes does the international co-production work for, because we have a Brazilian company now, but we'll have to qualify for Ancini. Does the sensibility work? We were actually looking to make a feature film about Charles Miller. So we had the rights to a book on Charles Miller. It's very popular at the moment. But we couldn't get the tone right. We were talking to O2 and Conspiração. We couldn't get the tone right for the Brazilian audience. It was too British. You know, it felt like a British Chariots of Fires that just happened to be set in Brazil. And so that was a learning process. And for us, we're now in the audience, and what we're now doing is we signed a deal a few weeks ago. We're going to be making a film about Tarsila Jamaral, which we're very excited about. But again, it's finding that it's a wonderful story to tell, but it's a wonderful period of history. It's a period of history where Brazil becomes Brazil, where it changes, and she was part of that. And so for me, I find that's really exciting. I mean, we had a particular story that we were looking to do about a football club, and it's like one of the things every distributor here tells me is like football films really don't do well in Brazil. But if you can tell the story right, it's not about that. It's about this. It's about the human story. It'll cross over. It's take for a British company down here or coming down here. It's very pleasant, but it's a longer process. But because both Phil and myself, our wives are Brazilian, we're here for the long game. So we see this as hopefully Tarsila will be the first thing that we make here. We're talking to HBO about a TV series. And opportunities, I think one of the things when Phil and I first came down, we had access to Oscar Niemeyer to do a documentary about his life. And Phil and I started talking because for me, the center of the world is film. So I am the center of my own universe kind of thing. And it's a bit arrogant when you look at what all of the other things can be, the website, the book, the exhibition, this and the other. That's where Phil's expertise comes in. And we looked here and we look at the market here, and it's open for people to be creative. And so we got very excited on our first trip. And so 3-4 years later, we've now got an office opening up, and we're very excited. Thank you. Yes.
May I ask in Portuguese?
Oh, hang on.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Eu sou do Instituto Criar, que é uma ONG que trabalha com audiovisual, com cinema há 10 anos, e a gente está tendo agora pela primeira vez a experiência de rodar um longa-metragem que vai para os cinemas agora em outubro. Essa foi uma experiência dura, também baseada em fatos reais, e a gente está vivendo agora, nesse momento de lançamento, junto com distribuidoras, junto com parceiros de mídia, o momento de avaliar o quanto a gente deve ou não mexer no filme para ele ficar mais ou menos comercial. E é o momento onde você tem, de fato, um filho ali falando, não, pelo amor de Deus, ninguém mexe nisso, mas você não tem a experiência, o know-how, a expertise dessas pessoas que estão no mercado, que é muito difícil o mercado no cinema no Brasil, é bastante fechado com algumas distribuidoras e com alguns parceiros de mídia, e eu queria entender se vocês também viveram esse momento de abrirmos mão de certas coisas por acreditar que alguns parceiros estão nos dizendo para seguir esse caminho ou não.
In the King's Speech, to tell the truth, no. It wasn't that we ever had that fight. We were sorry, that's freaking me out. I'm getting in Portuguese. The essence of the film was true the whole way through. When the Weinsteins came on board, and really they were the big players, they were the ones that were going to open up all of the doors and take a very strong editorial line in the film itself. We knew that they have great taste. If you look at their track record, they have great taste. That's not to say that you can't make a film where you just think, I absolutely believe in this, and I'm going to make it my way, and I don't care what anybody else got to say, but I say it's a business. So if you believe in your film in the way that you want to make it, the only way to do that is to find a distributor that has the same belief in you and the same belief in that type of material and that way to tell the project. But if not, they've got to be flexible. As I say, unless you self-fund, you have to be flexible. So I don't remember any battles. I do think we did have, and I don't think I'm betraying any trust, we did have, it was good for us at the time that we did the business for the Weinsteins. They allowed us they allowed Tom a lot of creative control, as opposed to some companies can want to be on set and change everything. But also it's at a certain budget level that really to agitate something that's at that budget, it's preposterous. I know a lot of people that have made much bigger films when actually you've then got a lot of exec producers that have to have an opinion, and and it would just all come apart. I mean, Danny Boyle, for instance, I know that he, not personally know, but I know that after some Hollywood experiences, he much prefers the smaller budget films because he's left alone. We didn't change much, and I don't think there was ever a point where we think we absolutely don't agree with you, and it's going to go nose to nose with anybody. Good luck with your film. Is that it? Yeah.
I was going, well, to say thank you very much again. If you don't mind, if it's good for me, if it's fine enough for me to ask, to offer people a chance to take a picture with you and Oscar. We don't see these things come in here every day.
Don't drop it.
Yeah, if you have, I mean, your iPhones, it's fine for you to do that. Thank you again so much, Simon.
My pleasure. Oh, one last thing before you come down. I've been asked to, we're launching, Great GB is launching today, Passion for Fashion. I don't know if you've heard about this. It's an online competition, and if you send in a short video, it's about the UK's influence on Brazilian fashion. Post it on Instagram under hashtag Passion for Fashion, and the prize is going to be a 2-week course on creative industries in the UK. Thank you.